So it's been about 5 months since my last upload, but of course I had to make a new video because Apple just announced a ton of new iPads and accessories at their spring event yesterday. So let's talk about what I've been doing for the past few months and take a look at what we can expect from Apple later on this month. First off, let's start with the iPad Air they just announced. This is the first time that the iPad Air comes in two different sizes, and we're getting an 11-inch and a 13-inch model. The 13-inch has 30% more screen real estate when compared to the 11-inch, and both of them have the Liquid Retina display. Front-facing camera this time around is now on the landscape edge, which is a lot more convenient if you're using the iPad for FaceTime calls. And you also have center stage this time, which keeps you in frame if you like to move around when you're talking. The Air also has landscape stereo speakers with spatial audio, which should be loud enough to make visits to the library extremely awkward. The Air's aluminum enclosure comes in 4 colors. We're getting a new blue color, a new purple one, we get Starlight, and Space Gray. Inside the Air, we get a new M2 chip, which means a 15% faster CPU and a 25% faster GPU, as well as a 40% faster neural engine. As far as accessories go, it's going to work with the Magic Keyboard. It's compatible with the USB-C Apple Pencil and a new pencil we'll talk about here in a second. And it's going to support Apple Pencil Hover since it has that M2 chip. Base model starts with 128 gigs of storage and goes up from there to 256, 512, and 1 terabyte. Prices start at $599 for the 128 gigabyte 11-inch Wi-Fi model. The 256 gigabyte 11-inch is $699. The 512 is $899, and the 1 terabyte is $1099. And if you want to upgrade to the Wi-Fi Plus cellular version, that's going to tack on an extra $150 to each of those amounts. For the 13-inch Air, prices start at $799 for the 128 gigabyte Wi-Fi model. The 256 gig 13-inch is $899. The 512 gig 13-inch is $1099, and the 1 terabyte is $1,299. So for all these products we're talking about in today's video, pre-orders on these started yesterday, so they're up for pre-order now, and then deliveries start rolling out next week on the 15th. Since Apple added pencil support to these, the Airs have always kind of been that great middle ground for digital artists that want to get a little bit more performance and features than what an entry-level iPad offers without having to shell out the extra money for a pro model. I think going forward, honestly, the Air is still going to continue to kind of be that sweet spot for most digital artists looking for an iPad. The Air is just a great solution for digital artists who are maybe new to the iPad, who don't want the bare minimum, but at the same time, they don't want to shell out for the top of the line. Speaking of shelling out more money, let's go ahead and move over to the big dog, the iPad Pro. Now, obviously, this is the one I'm super excited for because I've used the Pro models of the iPad since the Gen 1 came out in 2015. I currently use a 12.9-inch Gen 5 that came out in 2021. So for me, I haven't upgraded every single cycle. I skipped the Gen 6 from 2022. So the news of this one has me pretty excited. So let's go ahead, jump in, and see what's in store for the iPad Pros. First up, let's talk about the design. Just like the Air, the Pro is going to come in both the 11-inch and the 13-inch sizes. And right out of the gate, these things are super thin. The 11-inch is 5.3 millimeters thin. And what's crazy is the 13-inch, it's actually even thinner than that. It comes in at 5.1 millimeters. Just for comparison, my 5th gen iPad Pro is 6.4 millimeters thick. And then for further comparison, the 13-inch, it's even thinner than the iPod Nano, which makes it the thinnest Apple product ever made. Me personally, I can't wait for the stress test break videos on these, which you will definitely not be seeing on this channel. For weight, the 11-inch is 0.98 pounds. The 13-inch model is 1.28 pounds. And they come in silver and space black aluminum. The big upgrade on these are coming by way of the new OLED display, something that's been rumored for years now. And since a single OLED panel doesn't deliver enough brightness for the XDR classification, Apple's actually introducing a new technology called tandem OLED that uses 2 OLED panels at the same time and combines light from both of them to get full screen brightness. This display provides 1000 nits of full screen brightness for SDR and HDR content, 1600 nits of peak HDR brightness, and P3 wide color. And Apple's calling it the Ultra Retina XDR, and it's featured on both models. So the Liquid Retina XDR display from the last 2 generations of Pros That was reserved for the bigger 12.9-inch models, so it's kind of nice this time around seeing that both sizes get the same display. Another new option that Apple is offering on these Pros is something called Nano Texture Glass. Basically, it's going to maintain image quality and contrast while it scatters ambient light for less glare. This honestly sounds like it's going to have the same effect as a matte screen protector, which for me, I'm a huge fan of. I've used matte screen protectors on all my iPads for years, and I'll break down all the prices here in a bit as far as what the iPad Pros cost, but let's just talk about cost of this option itself. This is going to cost you an extra $100, but here's something else they didn't talk about in the press conference. Is the one thing that wasn't mentioned is that the Nano Texture Glass option, it's only available on the top two storage options. So there's a 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte that tops out these Pros. Those are the only storage sizes that this option is offered on. So we're going to talk more about the storage in a bit and more in cost, but that's something to consider. Now let's move on to performance. So my Gen 5 iPad Pro has Apple's M1 chip. The current iPad Pros have the M2 chip, so you might think that the new iPad Pros will get the M3 chip, but you would be wrong if you thought that, because Apple decided to skip the M3 and go straight to introducing the M4 chip on these new Pro models. This time around, you get mesh shading and ray tracing coming to the iPad for the first time ever, and the M4 chip offers 4 times faster rendering performance than the M2, and it's also super power efficient. It can match the same performance of the M2 using half the power, which is a really good sign for battery life. These iPad Pros have 20% improved thermal performance, which means they should run a little bit cooler than previous models. And just for comparison, these new models, they're up to 4 times faster than the M2 iPad Pros and up to 10 times faster than the original Pros. As for the cameras, what is kind of crazy here is that you just have the one single 12 megapixel camera on the back. There's no 10 megapixel ultra wide camera. Now the iPad Pro has had that ultra wide 10 megapixel camera since the Gen 4. So it does seem kind of like a step back here, dropping features that have become pretty much standard at this point for the last 2 models over the past 4 years. So I'm sure this was a necessary sacrifice to kind of get the thinness and weight down to where they wanted it to, but I don't know, is this a deal breaker for you? Let me know down in the comments. Is this something you're going to miss? Do you regularly use that 10 megapixel wide angle camera? Let me know. Even though that extra camera's gone, the LiDAR sensor is still there on the back, and you also get a new adaptive True Tone flash that's geared towards document scanning. You also get a 12 megapixel front facing camera that's also moved to the landscape edge, just like on the Airs. Okay, so now for the prices. Storage wise, 256 gigs is the base model. So an 11-inch Pro, 256 gigs is $999. The 11-inch 512 gig is $1199. The 11-inch 1 terabyte is $1599. And the 2 terabyte rounds out the 11-inch ones at $1,999. Now on to the 13-inch models. The 13-inch 256 gig model is $1,299. 13-inch 512 gig is $1,499. 1 terabyte is going to set you back $1899, and the top of the line 13-inch 2 terabyte model is $2299. Now, once again, this is just for the Wi-Fi model without the nano texture. So cellular on the Airs, that added an extra $150, but on the Pros, it's going to cost you an extra $200 to add that. And of course, like I said earlier, if you want that nano texture matte screen option, you're going to have to go with the 1 terabyte or the 2 terabyte models, and then it's going to cost you an extra $100 for that option. So definitely not cheap, definitely moving into that MacBook Pro pricing territory. So I can understand if there's some apprehension here with price. They're pretty expensive. One thing about the edge of the new iPad Pros is that they have a new charging and pairing system for the Apple Pencil, which honestly looks pretty much exactly the same as before. I'm sure that they had to make some changes internally with moving that front-facing camera to the landscape edge, but of course, with that change means what else but a new Apple Pencil. The Apple Pencil Pro is the newest Apple Pencil and has the same features like double tap, pressure sensitivity, and hover as the Gen 2 Pencil, but this time around there's a new squeeze function that they've added into the barrel of the pencil, which can bring up a new tool palette when you apply pressure. And also the developers of these apps, they will be able to customize exactly what function that squeeze performs in their app. So it'll be pretty cool to see how app developers utilize this in their products. Not only that, the Apple Pencil also has haptic feedback, so you can actually feel a confirmation when you squeeze on it. Apple has also added a gyroscope feature that allows you to roll the pencil to change the orientation of your brush in apps like Procreate. Another great addition is Apple has added Find My to the Pencil Pro, which means no more searching for that lost pencil in the couch cushions for hours. So the new Apple Pencil Pro retails for $129, the exact same price as the Gen 2 pencil, but it only works on the new Airs and the new Pros, which means if you have an older iPad, you won't be able to use the new pencil. Additionally, the new Airs and the new Pros can only use the new Pro Pencil or the USB-C pencil. You can't use a Gen 1 or a Gen 2 pencil with these new iPads. They just won't work. With the introduction of the Apple Pro Pencil, that means there's now 4 different Apple Pencil models, which I think is getting a little bit out of hand. And I'm sure it's going to be wildly confusing for the average consumer. I remember when the second one came out and just all the confusion that surrounded that, when people had to try to understand which pencil they needed based on what iPad they had or what iPad they were planning to buy. That was when there was 2. Now there's 4, so it's quickly becoming quite the mess. But I'll go ahead, I'll leave a link in the description to the Apple Pencil compatibility comparison chart that you see here. So if you need to research it a little bit more for yourself, you can find it down there. James Kuda, the CEO of Savage Interactive, the makers of Procreate, also gave us a look at what we can expect when we use the Apple Pencil Pro in Procreate, showing off the way that the barrel roll affects how the brush responds and performs inside the app. You'll also be able to use the squeeze function to bring up the shortcut menu, which is really cool. And then hovering over certain areas and then squeezing is going to allow you to quickly switch layers without having to go up into the layer menu, which is also going to allow you to identify a layer a lot quicker. That's a super, super cool feature that I'm really excited about. The haptic feedback is also going to trigger when you're snapping objects into alignment, which is also a really nice touch too. The Pencil Pro is also going to bring some really cool features to Procreate Dreams too, like using that barrel roll to animate while you're moving and rotating the stylus in live performance mode. The M4 chip is also going to allow for lens blur in Dreams, and it offers a 50% improvement in Dreams on the new Pro. In addition to the Pencil Pro, Apple also announced a new Magic Keyboard for the Pros. There's 2 different colors to match whichever color of Pro you got. There's a new function row added at the top and a larger trackpad with haptic feedback down at the bottom. And these are going to retail for $299 for the 11-inch version and $349 for the 13-inch. Last but not least, Apple also showed off some new apps we can expect. During the live stream, we got a sneak peek at ZBrush for the iPad, which personally I am super excited about. So if you wondered where I've been for the past few months, I know I've been totally missing from YouTube and social media. Here's the deal. I've been getting super big into physical sculpting with clay, mold making, painting, airbrushing, you name it, and also digital sculpting with Nomad on the iPad, Blender and ZBrush on the Mac, and diving pretty heavy into the world of 3D printing. So seeing ZBrush on the iPad, I find it super exciting. It's always fun to get new tools, new ways to create, new things to learn. That's something I always look forward to. So definitely stoked about this app. And I want to bring some content to the channel kind of around this new focus of mine. So definitely let me know down in the comments if that's something you guys want to see. All right, so that's it for today's recap. Let me know down in the comments anything you're super excited for. What are your takeaways? Or maybe did you place an order already? Because yeah, I did. I ordered the 1TB 13-inch Pro with the nano texture and the keyboard and the new Apple Pencil Pro. So stay tuned for my review on those. I got my order in right away, so delivery should be on the 15th of next week. But if you order now, it looks like the delivery date for a lot of these models is slipping back to June, especially for the 1 and 2 terabyte Pros with the nano texture. It seems the nano texture is the big feature everybody wants. So be prepared to wait if you didn't get your order in yet, but stay tuned for that review. All right, so that's it for today's video. It's great to be back after some time off. As always, I appreciate you guys watching, and until next time, keep creating.